want to wish each and every one of you, first of all, a very good week. We want to wish you, those on the East Coast, a happy afternoon, a good afternoon, good morning to you on the West Coast and Central Time Zones. Those following from Israel, following from Europe and parts abroad, a good evening. And today our guest is a very unique personality and someone who has an incredible story. Yuval Baron is the young man, I'm not going to give you his age, but an outstanding young man who's engaged to Shir. Who is Shir? You've all met Aviva Siegel. You've all heard the story of Keith Siegel. Each of them was abducted from their home, were imprisoned by Hamas. In the case of Keith, it was close to 500 days. And Yuval and Shir had gotten engaged about a month before the Black Simchas Torah, before October 7th. And they delayed their wedding because they were hoping and praying that her father, Keith, would return and would be able to attend that wedding. And we've seen it over the course of the last 6 weeks, Keith's return. To tell the story of Keith, to tell the story of the family, Yuval has incredibly graciously agreed to spend time with us to tell their story as a family and for us to have the chance to ask them a number of questions. Yuval, if we could hand it over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Good to be here, especially under good circumstances, at least for our family story. Of course, it's hard to be completely happy because too many people are still in captivity for too long. But yeah, I would like to share our story. But before I do that, I want to thank the community of FIDF. We, as a family, got exposed to this unique and amazing organization that during this long period of time with people being held hostage and with our brave warriors fighting every day, your support is an amazing help and an anchor. And I can say that not for one day or one single moment did we feel alone in this long struggle. So I want to thank you for supporting us from close by and from far away. We feel it, we appreciate it. So thank you very much. And about our family, so yeah, Keith is an American citizen. He grew up in North Carolina, made Aliyah, came to Israel after his older brother Lee, who got settled in a kibbutz. Keith saw the concept, fell in love with it, and also fell in love with Aviva, whom he met through his brother Lee. And they got married and looked for a young community to join. And right at the Gaza border, which was not really the border as we know it today, these days, a new community was formed of Kibbutz Kfar Aza, and they really loved the people and the atmosphere and the location, which was way more peaceful back then. And they built their home there, raised 4 amazing children. The youngest is especially amazing, and that's my future wife, Shir. They already have 5 grandchildren, not from us yet. And they lived there for over 40 years with the community throughout all the wars that were going on between Israel and Gaza. And Keith, with a very strong sense of commitment, was always the first one to come back after they had to leave for a war. He's very, very connected to the place. And on October 7th, they were there, alarms in the morning, running to the safe room. And, you know, we got all the details. Aviva came back, but at approximately 10 a.m., when the messages we sent them already didn't go through. They were taken. About 15 Hamas terrorists broke to the house, went to the safe room, door snapped open. Who knew that you need to lock a safe room door? There's no option. Like, it's supposed to guard you from missiles from the outside, not from burglary. And Keith debated like whether to escape or to fight, but Aviva focused him and said, like, there are over 15 of them, all armed. There are two of us. We don't stand a chance. Let's do what they say. And we're extremely grateful for that, because we know that people who fought sadly ended their lives, many of them. They were taken to Gaza, held together for 51 days. After that, during the first hostage deal at the end of November 2023, Aviva came back to us. It was really the most exciting thing I've ever experienced until Keith came back. Which was really I can't find the words to describe it. There's the term in Judaism of Techiat Hameitim, of the revival of the dead. So that's how it felt like with Aviva as well, but especially with Keith. We knew nothing about him for almost a year and a half. So we got the story from Aviva, and back in April 24, we got a Hamas video of him, and we got the estimations, but suddenly seeing him emerges from the Hamas vehicle. I'm sure many of you saw it broadcasted on TV with this whole ridiculous ceremony, but then coming to us physically, and it's Keith. He's thin, he's pale, he's weak, but it's Keith that we know. And I think even if you're not a hostage family, which I really hope most of you aren't, because it's the most terrible thing, but when you see this, you can't, what's the word I'm looking for? It's so exciting seeing these people literally come back to life. And that's the proof that it's possible. I always say, me sitting here talking to you is the proof that hostages can come back, that I and my family, we do not have to carry this title of hostage families forever. When agreements are made, people can come back to their loved ones, lives can be saved, people can come back for proper burial. It's possible. It's difficult, it's hard, the prices are high, but it's doable. And knowing that, I think we cannot allow any hostage to remain there. Hearing Keith's stories, you understand that the conditions there are terrible, and that every day there is a life threat, and they all have to come back as soon as possible.
Yuval, would you elaborate for us, the conditions that Keith lived under and how he was able to survive?
So I'll describe briefly. It's important for me to leave it for Keith to tell his story in his own words and his own choice. I don't want to speak for him too much. But the stories are terrible. It's really it's what you hear about: starvation, no water, sometimes underground, sometimes above the ground, exposed to airstrikes. Gaza is very highly populated and condensed, and Keith experienced the proximity of the Israeli Air Force attacks, and as a miracle, he wasn't hurt by them, but it could have happened. And all day long being with the terrorists, that most of them were monsters, some less, but in general, yeah, very, very bad conditions, and very bad attitude, and mainly, they're under a war in these terrible conditions. You can never know what they might think or feel or do, and it always, like, the first person to experience it is the hostage that they're holding. So that was also very difficult. Keith was moved a lot, sometimes because of airstrikes, sometimes for other conditions. So he moved 33 places during his time there. He was alone for half a year in total. And on other times he was held with other hostages that are still there. And I think that's a lot of his motivation to do whatever he can to help free them. He tells us that, he's back home to his life. His friends, his fellow hostages, if you can call it that way, they're still there, and it's unfair. And why is he here, and they are still there? So I think we see it with many hostages that come back, that they cannot start to heal and go back to their life while hostages are still there. And I feel the same. The former hostage family, the other families have become my own family, and we feel a strong connection, and our happiness and our joy is incomplete while people are still there, even though we got our small victory in our own family territory.
Survivor's guilt. You see that with Holocaust survivors as well. Why me?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Question for you. Obviously we saw his physical condition coming out. A ghost. I mean, it was horrific.
Right.
In terms of him now getting sunlight, in terms of him slowly but surely getting caloric nutrition, can you share with us physically? Have you seen a change in him? Has it improved over the last few weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. Better by the day. It's really moving and exciting to see. Like you described, he gets his color back and his weight back, slowly but surely. But yeah, we try to help him, and the whole Israeli government that received him, whether it's the hospitals or the doctors that continue to be in touch with him, they all are extremely helpful and supportive. So yeah, I think he's in the right way. He's still not in the same shape that he was taken. I think that will take a bit longer, but definitely in the right course.
Over those close to 500 days, what did he do mentally to keep himself, first of all, to keep his optimism, keep himself stimulated, especially he's all by himself? What were some of the things that he did?
So that's pretty amazing, because I think all of us would think about such a long period of time, being on your own, having nothing to do. You can go crazy easily. And Keith, he's really into meditation and mindfulness, and that's things that he used to practice before he was kidnapped. And I think it helped him a lot during his time there. And in general, Keith is a helping and giving person. He studied occupational therapy, and he worked for the last 2 decades in the pharmaceutical industry in the mental health section. So the whole, I would call it a field of keeping yourself sane and mentally stable was not new for him, and I think he like had tools from his previous life that he could use there and practice there, and that really helped him survive and go through it.
That's just, I mean, that's incredible. You mentioned he was 6 months in isolation all by himself.
Correct.
When he communicated, or when he was allowed to communicate with the Hamas terrorists, what language was the communication? Did he start to learn Arabic? I mean, how did they communicate?
Yeah.
English?
So at first in English, some of them know Hebrew because they spend time in Israeli prison. And Keith learned Arabic like many other hostages. You can see when they are released on this last, or I hope current, hostage deal. You see the video that the Israeli media publishes, and then you see the video that Hamas are doing, and usually there's a part where the hostage is like in the vehicle or something, and they speak Arabic. So I think many of them got Arabic there. Yeah, but I remember from Aviva's story from the beginning, English, sign language. At the end, it's simple, so they managed to communicate. And of course, when you're with someone, with another hostage, when he was with Aviva, it was way easier because there's someone to share this terrible experience with and communicate.
When Aviva spoke with us, she had shared that he physically, I think there may have been some broken bones or issues with his back,
Right.
and terrible pain. Did that back heal, or it never healed throughout the duration of the captivity?
So the wounds from October 7th, which was broken ribs and a gunshot wound in his arm, that managed to heal, and happily, there wasn't very serious damage there. But you can see with Keith, and he describes that just lying down or sitting still for so long, it affects your body, and he still hasn't gained his strength back. But he's working on it, and again, I'm sure with time it will continue to improve.
Now I would like to ask you some other questions.
Yeah, go for it.
The family, Keith's children, then when Aviva comes out, it must have been a never-ending state of anxiety, of tension, of sadness. Can you describe what it was like for the children over the course of those 500 days?
So it was very difficult. Shir, my fiance, fiance, is that for a girl and boy? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I can tell more about her because at the end I live with her, and this entire time I was very very close to her. She felt like she was an orphan, for the first almost 2 months, and then getting her mom back, she was so grateful, but mission was only half completed for our family. So yeah, like you described, never-ending anxiety, no matter how active you are, what you do, where you fly around the world, who you meet, who you speak to, whatever rock you turn over, it's never enough, because it will only be enough once they're back home. I think being active kept us sane. It's sort of an escapism. You concentrate on the doing, and then you less fall and sink down, because if you really getting to the depth of this experience, having a loved one being held hostage by a terrible terror organization, if you grab this thought all the time, then it's just too difficult to handle. So I think everyone of us found the way to cope with it and to function, and at least for Sheer having this super important mission and always thinking what she can do more, even if it's not effective, right? We'll never know what's the effectiveness of everything that was done. What's the effectiveness of me speaking to you guys here, but we really try to be everywhere possible in every media platform, meet every person who might have some influence on the process. I think that kept her going. Yeah, and for all of them, each person is different, but like I said in the beginning, we never felt alone, and part of that is that so many people were taken hostage. So the hostage families, they really became one big family, and with these amazing supporters, like the Hostage Family Forum, for instance, that really gives you a warm hug and lots of mental support, because you don't feel the loneliness, which I think is one of the most terrible feelings a human being can live with.
Can you describe that experience first when Aviva came out and then when Keith came out?
It's hard to find the words. Really, the closest I found was the Techiat Hameitim, the revival of the dead, like I described, because you try to remain optimistic and sort of broadcast to the world, to the universe, that there's going to be a good end for this horrific situation. But sometimes there's despair, and sometimes it's hard for you to look to the future and believe that there's going to be a positive ending. And then when it happens, really it's so weird, because your entire life were going around this situation where Keith is in Gaza, and now he's back here. So I mean, really, I even now I can't find the words, especially in English. But I think everyone who's listening can get my feeling, even if I don't find the words to describe it. Like when I'm saying Keith Siegel came back home, we all share the same feeling. And when I'm describing a tragedy, like for instance, Hirsch Goldberg Polin not coming home alive, we all feel the same shrinking of our heart for the tragedy that could have been different. So I think it's a sentiment we all share, that these people are our brothers and sisters. By chance, it was them who were kidnapped. It could have been anyone of us here in Israel or anyone visiting, right? Some non-Israelis were taken as well. And I think knowing that people just like us were taken, like every basic and simple right was brutally taken from them. We all feel the urge that they need to come back to their freedom, to their lives, to their family, because that's the right thing to do. No one belongs there. No one needs to be a hostage of a terror organization. We're talking about civilians who were just living their life within the borders of the state of Israel, and they were just taken, picked from their beds, and some of them are held there for a year and a half. That's unbelievable.
If we may ask, I'm assuming that Keith and Aviva will move back to Kfar Aza? Is that a fair assumption or not necessarily?
Depends who you ask and when you ask. I don't think they know. The community hasn't returned there yet. They're still working on renovating the place. There's lots of damage there. So still early to decide. I really hope they don't, because you never know. Living by the border, on the one hand, it's super important. You're the human shield. On the other hand, really bad things can happen, and October 7th is the proof. So I hope that our government and military will learn from this incident and be smart and never let something like that happen again. But saying that, I think after the trauma, it's a fair assumption to maybe reconsider the place of living. But again, I don't want to speak for them. Like I said, they're very connected to the place and the community, so they'll make their decision.
Yuval, we're very grateful that you took the time to address us, to speak to us, to share on behalf of the family. We're very grateful to you. Are there any last words that you'd want to share with us?
For me, in every opportunity that I get, the most important message to convey is that all hostages need to come back. Like I said, it's possible. I experienced it from firsthand with Keith and Aviva being brought back to us. I think our country will never be able to heal, and the Jewish nation in general. You described Holocaust survivors. I wasn't born yet, but with my own family history, it feels similar. I don't want to make comparisons and maybe insult people, but we've been through a sort of a Holocaust here on October 7th, and some people are still experiencing that in the dark tunnels in Gaza. Some people from our country, our nation. So anyone who can have any influence with regard to that, I think my plead, my request, my ask is that you do anything possible to make sure that they all come back as soon as possible, the live ones back to their families, and the dead ones for a proper burial, because they deserve at least that.
Yuval, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very grateful the way that you were open, honest, you shared, the family's perspective, your perspective. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.